parents said. Everyone's childhood is hard. Like statistics somehow cancelled the bruises still imprinted on my nerves. I stared at my dad over the rim of my glass, fingers tight enough around it that I could feel the pulse in my thumb. The dining room light hummed above us, a faint buzzing that suddenly felt way too loud. Mom's fork hovered halfway to her mouth, mashed potatoes sliding off in slow motion as she realized what she just co-signed. My tongue felt thick and useless. Across from me, my brother Liam coughed into his napkin like he wanted to disappear into it. The roast beef on my plate had gone cold, congealed gravy shining under the light, and all I could think was, did they really just say that out loud? It's not a competition, Max, Dad added, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand like we were arguing about football teams, not my nervous system. You think you're the only one who had it rough? Look at the news. Kids getting blown up, kids starving. Everyone's childhood is hard. My jaw clenched so tight my ears rang. I'm not saying I had it worse than anyone. I heard myself say, voice shaky but weirdly flat. I'm saying when you hit me until I couldn't sit down, and then told me to get over it, that wasn't normal. Mom's eyes darted to the kitchen, as if the walls might have ears. Lower your voice, she hissed. The neighbors. There it was. 28 years old, and somehow I was still the problem because someone might hear what happened. It was a Saturday night, actually. Last Saturday, to be exact. The kind of suburban evening that looks harmless from the outside, streetlights flickering on, sprinklers ticking in front yards, someone up the road grilling something that smelled like burnt sausages. I'd driven back to my parents' place because my sister Ellie was in town with her 2 kids, and Mom had texted, family dinner, everyone. No excuses? We never see you anymore, Max? We never see you anymore, has become Mom's favorite way of saying. You're not performing your role in the family properly. And because I'm still apparently susceptible to that particular guilt trip, I found myself pulling up in front of the same beige brick house I grew up in, stomach doing slow backflips. The house hadn't changed much. Same crack in the driveway. Same dying azalea in the front garden. Same front door that sticks unless you lift and push at the exact right angle. When I walked in, the TV was already on in the living room, volume steady, some game show flashing colors across the wall. It was like stepping into a preserved exhibit titled Childhood, circa 2000. Max! Mom had come bustling out from the kitchen, apron already stained, cheeks flushed. She smelled like garlic and that floral perfume she's worn since I was 10. You made it! Hey, Mom! I said, letting her hug me, my body stiffening in that automatic way it does. Dad shouted a greeting from the couch without looking away from the TV. Ellie waved from the dining table where she was trying to coax her toddler into eating peas. Liam gave me the chinjut hello he's perfected over the years. We did the usual script. Work small talk. Still at that software place? Yes, Dad, I still work in tech. Relationship status inquiry. You dating anyone? Not really. You're too picky. A quick comment about my haircut. Then food. Always food. Drown everything in gravy and hope it swallows the hard bits. I had gone into the evening with a plan. Be pleasant, stay 3 hours max, avoid anything heavier than. Remember Tamagotchi? Then leave before my chest started to feel like a fist. I hadn't planned on bringing up therapy. I definitely hadn't planned on saying the word abuse out loud. But then Ellie, bless her chaotic heart, mentioned that she'd started seeing a therapist too. It's actually been really good, she said, bouncing her baby on one knee while one-handedly cutting her food. She's helping me with how I react when Ollie has a meltdown. You know, not just yelling, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about like we heard growing up. She said it casually, like a joke, but the phrase sat between us like a landmine. Mom winced. We didn't say it like that, she protested. You literally said it like that, I blurted. Everyone paused. Even the baby stopped smearing peas to look around, sensing the shift. Mom gave a tight laugh. Well, maybe once or twice, she conceded. We were stressed. You kids were a handful. I felt that familiar flicker of should I just let this go. It's the instinct that has kept me quiet for decades. But therapy has taught me that squashing everything down is why my left eye twitches when someone raises their voice. So instead, I took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. I've been seeing someone too, I said. A therapist. Ellie's face lit up. Really? That's great, Max. Dad frowned. What do you need a therapist for? He asked. You've got a good job, your health, roof over your head. What's there to be depressed about? It's not just about depression, I said, steady as I could. It's about working through stuff. From when we were kids. Oh, here we go, Dad muttered, reaching for the salt. What stuff? Mom asked, doing that fake careful voice that means she's already on the defensive. We weren't perfect, but we did our best. I finished for her, because I have heard that line so many times it may as well be carved into my DNA. I know. I'm not saying you didn't try. I'm saying some of the things that happened were not okay. Ellie shifted uneasily. Liam stared harder at his plate. My heart thudded loud enough that I could feel it in my fingertips. What things? Mom pressed. The hitting, I said, and the word felt like dropping a stone into a still pond. The belt. Being locked in my room. Being told I was asking for it when I flinched. You know. Those things. You make it sound like we beat you within an inch of your life. Dad snapped. It was discipline. Every parent did it back then. Everyone's childhood is hard, he said a few minutes later, as if a generational trend graph could neutralize being spanked so hard you couldn't sit in class the next day. And that's where this post started. For context, I'm 30 now. Non-binary, they slash them, though my parents still trip over that or pretend it's something I'll grow out of. I moved out at 23 and didn't really look back, at least physically. Mentally? Different story. The house might be 20 minutes away, but it's still living rent-free in my nervous system. I didn't clock any of this as abuse until embarrassingly recently. For most of my life, I described my childhood as strict but fair, with that weird pride you get when you survive something you haven't let yourself examine. We weren't starving. We had birthdays and Christmas and school uniforms. My parents weren't drunk or absent. By the metrics we were taught, we were lucky. But lucky doesn't mean my body doesn't remember. I remember being 6, standing on a chair at the sink, washing dishes with water so hot it turned my hands pink. I dropped a plate. It shattered in the sink, a loud, sharp crash. I froze, heart leaping into my throat. Mom was on it in a second. What did you do? She snapped, hurrying over. I'm sorry. I babbled, already crying. You clumsy child, she hissed, grabbing my arm hard enough that her nails dug into my skin. Do you know how much that cost? It was some crappy white plate from Kmart, but in that moment it was priceless. She shook me once, hard, then pointed to the hallway. Bathroom. No. The bathroom was where the hairbrush lived. I remember staring at the tiles, counting the blue squares while she hit the backs of my legs. I remember trying so hard not to scream because that always made it worse. I remember the way my skin burned for hours afterward, and how, when I told her, she said, "Then maybe you'll be more careful next time." Was that discipline? According to my parents, yes. According to my therapist, it was. Corporal punishment severe enough to create a trauma response. Tomato, I guess. There was the time I got a B+ in maths instead of an A, and Dad made me sit at the dining table until midnight redoing every question. Every time I got one wrong, he'd slam his hand next to the paper and say, "You're better than this," like a threat. When I cried from exhaustion, he said, "Do you think crying is going to solve quadratic equations?" and laughed at his own joke. There was the time, at 12, when I talked back, actually said the words, "That's not fair," and he took off his belt in one smooth motion like some cowboy movie, except the only villain in the room was a kid who wanted to go to a friend's sleepover. And there were quieter things. The days when they went cold, not hot. Mom giving me the silent treatment for 3 days because I accidentally told a family friend she'd lied about her age. Dad not speaking to me for a week after I forgot to record his favorite show. Me hovering in doorways, trying to gauge the temperature of the room by the angle of his shoulders or the tension in her jaw. I didn't realize how much all of that shaped me until 1.5 years ago, when I started waking up with my heart racing, like I'd been dropped into a sprint in my sleep. My GP said it was anxiety and handed me a printed sheet about breathing exercises. I don't really have anything to be anxious about, I told him, annoyed. My life is fine. He looked at my chart, then back at me. Sometimes, he said carefully, people whose childhoods were intense only feel safe enough to have anxiety when things are finally stable. Intense. I repeated like he'd called my past a Marvel movie. My childhood wasn't intense. It was just strict. He raised an eyebrow. How strict? That's when, for the first time out loud to a stranger, I heard myself say, "They hit us. Not all the time, but enough. With belts, and wooden spoons, and once with a curtain rod. And we weren't allowed to cry about it or we'd get more." He didn't flinch. He just nodded and said, "Have you ever talked to someone about that?" I almost said, "I'm talking to you." But I knew what he meant. Not just to complain over a drink with friends, not just to make dark jokes about being hit as a kid builds character lol, but actually talk. So I Googled for a psychologist. I wanted someone who wouldn't try to tell me my parents did their best as an excuse. I ended up with Dr. Patel, a woman in her 40s with silver streaks in her hair and tissue boxes strategically placed around the room like microphones. In our second session, she asked, "Were you allowed to have emotions as a child?" "Of course," I said. "We weren't robots." "What happened when you cried?" she asked. I thought about it. "They told me to stop," I said. "Or I'll give you something to cry about. Or go to your room if you're going to carry on. Or they ignored me." She tilted her head. "And when you were scared?" "That was being dramatic." "Angry? Disrespectful? Excited? Too loud?" She was quiet for a moment. "Sounds like a lot of your feelings were inconvenient," she said. I laughed, but it came out sharp. "Yeah, well, you can't mute a kid, but you can turn up the TV." She looked at me over her glasses. "They actually did that?" I nodded. "If I was crying in my room, you could always hear the TV get louder. Like a soundtrack over my nervous breakdown." She said very gently, "That's a pretty clear metaphor for emotional neglect." I remember staring at the carpet, the ugly geometric pattern blurring. "It doesn't feel like neglect," I muttered. "They were there. They fed us. Came to sports days. Dad worked 2 jobs. Neglect isn't just about food and clothes," she said. "It's also about what happens when you need comfort or support and consistently don't get it." It took months for that to sink in. Months of telling stories in session that started with, "But it's not like they were monsters," and ended with, "And then I had to put ice on the welts before school so the teacher wouldn't see." The first time I called it abuse out loud, the word tasted sour in my mouth. Like I was accusing them of something unforgivable. Like I was ungrateful. "Calling something what it is doesn't erase the fact that you love them," Dr. Patel said. "It just acknowledges the impact their behavior had on you." That nuance is completely lost on my parents. Their brains seem to only have 2 categories: good parents and monsters. Admitting they hurt me scrambles their self-image, so they shove it back into the "everyone had it hard, quit whining" box. Back at the dinner table, Dad's "everyone's childhood is hard" line landed with that same thud. Like I was trying to copyright suffering. "I know other people had it bad," I told him, hands trembling. "I'm not saying I had the worst childhood in the world. I'm saying mine left me with panic attacks and a constant feeling like I'm waiting to be yelled at. That's not nothing. Dad spread his hands. Welcome to life, he said. You think my old man was gentle? I got the strap for looking at him funny. Did I spend thousands of dollars on some shrink to tell me I was abused? No. I grew up, got a job, put food on the table for you kids. You're here, you're alive, it can't have been that bad. There's that generational baton. I survived worse, therefore what I did to you doesn't count. Why is it a competition? I asked, feeling my throat close. Why is your pain the measuring stick for mine? Because you're making us out to be monsters. Mom snapped, finally dropping the fake calm. We did everything for you. We gave up so much. You had a roof, clothes, nice Christmases. You never went hungry. I wanted to say, I did go hungry emotionally, but I knew that would sound too dramatic in their heads. So instead I said, both things can be true. You worked hard and you hurt me. You can love someone and still damage them. We never ignored you, she insisted. If anything, we were always on you. The only time you left me alone was when I was upset. I shot back. Do you remember the time I locked myself in the bathroom because I was scared of Dad after he threw the chair? You turned up the TV so you couldn't hear me crying. Dad's face reddened. That chair broke because you wouldn't sit still, he said. And I did not throw it, I knocked it over. You always exaggerate. My vision narrowed. I could feel my pulse in my ears, a roaring rush of blood. I looked at Ellie, silently begging her to remember something, anything. I do remember the TV thing, she said slowly. Not that specific night, but yeah? It would get louder. I just thought. She trailed off. Thought what? That it was normal. That it meant. Ignore the noise. Liam shrugged. I genuinely don't remember, he said, which has become his catch-all for. I'm not getting involved. He was younger when things were worst. I was the designated scapegoat. By the time he was old enough to misbehave, Dad's blood pressure had mellowed and Mom had discovered wine. I'm not bringing this up to punish you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm bringing it up because I've spent 30 years thinking I was broken. That I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too everything. And I'm finally realizing that maybe I reacted the way any kid would when they were hit and ignored. I need you to at least consider that. Dad pushed his chair back, the legs scraping the floor. I'm not sitting here to be told I'm an abuser in my own house, he said, voice rising. You want to blame someone, blame your phone. Blame social media, all those videos telling you your parents ruined your life. You kids today are soft. You hit me, Dad, I said, my own voice getting louder too. That's not TikTok. That's my memory. The baby started crying, reacting to the volume if not the content. Ellie bounced him automatically, eyes wide. Mom hissed, not in front of the children. As if naming what happened was more dangerous than what actually happened. And then she said it. Everyone's childhood is hard. Like that. Casual shrug. Move on. I thought about all the stats I've read, 1 in 4, 1 in 3, AC scores, generational trauma. Numbers. Percentages. Graphs. Do you hear yourself? I asked quietly. Do you realize what you're saying? Lots of kids got hurt, so why are you making a big deal of it? That's like saying, lots of people get into car crashes, so you're not allowed to limp. Dad scoffed. Exactly. People get into car crashes and they get on with it. They don't spend their whole lives talking about their limp. Some of them go to physiotherapy so they can walk without pain. I said. That's what this is. He rolled his eyes so hard I half expected them to get stuck. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Spoiler, very little helps me sleep at night. I ended up leaving early. I stood up from the table, heart racing, hands shaking so badly I nearly knocked over my water. I'm going home, I said. I can't. I can't keep having this conversation if the response is always you're exaggerating and everyone had it bad. It's making me feel crazy. Mom's eyes filled with tears instantly. So that's it, she whispered. You're just going to storm out? After everything we've done? I'm not storming, I said, even though my body felt like a thundercloud. I'm protecting myself. From your parents, Dad said, incredulous. We're the enemy now. I didn't say that, I replied. But if you refuse to acknowledge that things you did hurt me, then yeah, being here feels unsafe. The word hung there. Unsafe. It felt too big, but also exactly right. Ellie stood up too, baby on her hip. Maybe we should all take a breather, she said. This is a lot. Don't you start, Mom snapped at her. You're the one who went around telling your little therapist we screamed at you. Ellie flinched. I instinctively stepped between them, an old habit I thought I'd shaken. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my gums. Okay, I said. I'm done. I grabbed my coat, my keys, the Tupperware container Mom had given me, for leftovers, like that somehow proved we were fine. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the keys once, twice, before I could unlock my car. I sat there in the driveway for a solid 5 minutes before I could trust myself to drive. My whole body was buzzing, like I'd drunk 20 coffees, except it wasn't energy, it was just pure adrenaline. My brain was doing that fast channel surfing thing, every instance of being hit, every eye roll when I cried, every "Stop being so sensitive!" flashing like a cruel highlight reel. When I finally got home to my tiny apartment, I went straight to the bathroom and caught sight of myself in the mirror. Red eyes, flushed cheeks, jaw clenched so hard a muscle ticked. I looked like I'd just run a marathon or escaped a fire. All I'd done was sit at a table and try to tell my parents they hurt me. I ended up on the shower floor, back against the tiles, water pelting down, sobbing in that weird silent way where your chest convulses but there's no sound. The contrast between that and the muffled, pillow-screaming kid I used to be hit me like a second wave. The next week in therapy, I recounted the whole thing. Dr. Patel listened, occasionally jotting something down, but mostly just, there. When I finished, she said, "You handled that conversation really well." I snorted. "I cried in their driveway and then in my shower," I said. "You stayed with your reality," she said. "You didn't let them talk you out of what you know happened. You left when it became too much. That's huge progress." "It feels like crap," I admitted. "I feel disloyal." "To whom?" she asked. "To them," I said. "To the family. To this idea that we were just like everyone else. Like I'm betraying some unspoken pact by calling it what it was." She nodded. "There's a grief in letting go of that narrative," she said. "It means you're also letting go of the fantasy that one day they'll wake up, see it exactly as you do, and apologize perfectly." I stared at the fake plant in the corner. "So what? I just accept that they'll never get it." "Maybe," she said. "Maybe not. People change. Parents sometimes do come around. But your healing can't hinge on that. You can validate your own experience, even if they never do." The idea of being my own witness felt both empowering and deeply unfair. Why did I have to be the one to do all this work? Why couldn't they just say, "We're sorry we hit you. We didn't know better, but we should have known better." It wasn't okay. But if there's anything I've learned, it's that should has never moved my parents an inch. Since that dinner, I've gone low contact. Not no contact. I'm not ready for that, and part of me isn't sure I ever will be, but low. I didn't go to the next Sunday roast. I didn't answer every "Why don't you call your mother?" text. When Mom sent a group message saying, "Family Zoom this Thursday to plan Christmas," I replied, "I won't be able to make it. We can catch up another time." She responded with, "We never see you anymore," followed by a crying emoji. An emoji. Like that somehow made it softer. Liam texted me separately. "Liam, You really pissed them off the other night, lol. Me, I noticed. Liam, I get you were upset, but maybe dial it back? They're old. They're not gonna change. Me, so I should just shut up? Liam, ick. I just don't like the drama. That word again. Drama. Sensitive. Too much. It's funny how many synonyms there are for. Has a nervous system that reacts when hurt. Ellie, on the other hand, sent me. Ellie, hey. You okay? Me, rough few days, but yeah. Thanks. Ellie. For what it's worth, you weren't crazy. I remember a lot of the same stuff. I just pushed it down. Me, welcome to the club. Ellie, I'm thinking about asking Mum and Dad to come to a joint session with me and my therapist. No idea if they'll agree. Me, lol, good luck. Ellie, yeah, I know. But, even if they say no, I want it on record that we tried. That on record thing stuck with me. There's something about writing this here, online, that feels like that too. Like putting a little flag in the ground that says, this happened. I'm not making it up. Because that's the thing about gaslighting, whether it's deliberate or just learned minimization. It makes you doubt your own nervous system. You start to think, maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe everyone got hit, locked in rooms, called names, told to stop crying, and I'm just weak. But then you tell someone else, a friend, a therapist, a stranger on the internet, and they go, what the hell? That's not okay. And suddenly you realize the bruise on your nerve endings is from an impact, not from you leaning on yourself funny. I don't have a neat ending to this. My parents haven't apologized. They haven't suddenly become enlightened, gentle elders. As far as they're concerned, their sensitive middle child has been corrupted by therapy and doesn't appreciate how good they had it. What's changed is me. I no longer swallow the everyone had it hard line without choking. I can say, in a steady voice, my childhood was harder than it needed to be because the people who are supposed to protect me sometimes hurt me instead. I can choose not to sit at a table where my pain is a punchline or a debate topic. I can hang up the phone if my dad starts yelling. I can say, I'm not available for this conversation, and mean it. And when that old voice creeps in, the one that sounds like both of my parents saying, you're so dramatic, you're making it all about you, other kids had it worse. I have new voices to answer it with. Dr. Patel. Friends. Ellie's tentative. You're not crazy, I remember too. Mostly I have my own. So yeah? My parents said. Everyone's childhood is hard. Like statistics somehow cancelled the bruises still imprinted on my nerves. But those bruises are mine to name. And I'm finally, painfully, starting to believe that I deserve more than a turned-up TV and a "we did our best" stamped over the parts that hurt.